"Nobody moves until we find that little girl," the quiet ski instructor said. And for the first time that day, everyone stopped looking at him like he was just a man in a worn jacket. The storm had swallowed the mountain trails. The rescue radios were filled with worried voices, and a wealthy CEO who once laughed at his simple life was now watching him become the only person who seemed to understand the mountain. But before Caleb Whitmore became the man everyone trusted, he was just the quiet single dad most people overlooked. 24 hours earlier, the snow-covered peaks of Alpine Ridge Resort sparkled beneath a pale winter sun. Luxury SUVs lined the parking area. Guests in designer jackets walked toward the slopes, and the resort buzzed with the excitement of another perfect weekend in Colorado. Among them was Vivian Ashford, a successful CEO known for building one of the fastest-growing technology companies in America. She was confident, intelligent, and used to rooms changing the moment she entered them. People listened when she spoke. People followed when she decided. But Caleb Whitmore was different. He didn't rush to impress anyone. He didn't talk about money, connections, or achievements. He simply helped children adjust their ski boots, checked the safety equipment, and smiled when nervous beginners took their first careful steps onto the snow. "You really chose this?" Vivian asked him that afternoon, looking around at the small ski patrol cabin near the edge of the resort. A simple cabin, a simple job, and spending your days teaching strangers how to slide down a mountain? Caleb looked at the snowy valley below and gave a quiet smile. "It's not a simple life. It's a peaceful one." Vivian tilted her head, almost amused. To her, success had always been measured in numbers, buildings, and influence. She couldn't understand why someone with Caleb's calm confidence would choose a life so far away from the spotlight. What she didn't know was that Caleb had already stood in places where recognition meant nothing and responsibility meant everything. Now he found purpose in smaller moments, teaching his daughter Emma how to respect nature, helping lost visitors find their way, and volunteering with the resort ski patrol whenever someone needed help. His past was something he carried quietly, not something he displayed. Inside his modest cabin were memories he never discussed, including medals from a chapter of his life that few people knew existed. But Caleb had no desire to be admired. He had learned that true character didn't need an audience. As evening approached, the temperature dropped, and dark clouds slowly gathered over the mountain. The cheerful sounds of the resort faded beneath the rising wind. Vivian watched Caleb walk through the snow with the same calm expression he always wore. She still saw a ski instructor living a small life. She still believed she understood him. She didn't know that by the next day, the entire mountain would be searching for her missing daughter. And the quiet man she underestimated would be the one everyone turned to when hope seemed impossible to find. Before the story takes a turn, subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss what happens next. And tell me, do you think she should trust him? Let me know in the comments. Now, let's continue. The mountain had a way of revealing what people try to hide, and Caleb Whitmore had spent years learning one important lesson. The loudest person in the room was rarely the strongest. The morning after Vivian Ashford questioned his choices, Caleb woke before sunrise, just as he always did. The small cabin was quiet except for the soft crackle of the wood stove and the gentle sound of snow brushing against the windows. On the kitchen table sat a simple breakfast, 2 mugs of coffee, and a handwritten note from his daughter Emma reminding him not to forget their afternoon tradition. Caleb smiled when he read it. For him, these small moments were worth more than anything money could buy. Outside, Alpine Ridge Resort slowly came alive. The first chairlift began moving, ski instructors gathered near the training area, and families arrived with excitement in their voices. Caleb spent the morning helping beginners who were nervous about the slopes. He never rushed them. He never laughed when they fell. He simply offered patience and encouragement. "The mountain is not something you conquer," he told a young boy struggling with his balance. "You learn to respect it, and it teaches you in return." A short distance away, Vivian watched from the resort lodge while answering business calls. Her world moved quickly. Meetings, decisions, and constant pressure followed her everywhere. Even during vacation, she found it difficult to slow down. Her daughter Lily, however, saw the mountain differently. The 10-year-old loved the snow, the fresh air, and the feeling of learning something new. She often asked Caleb questions because she noticed how calm he was. "How do you always know what to do?" Lily asked while Caleb helped her adjust her ski poles. Caleb looked toward the mountain peaks glowing under the morning light. "I'll listen first. Most problems tell you what they need if you are patient enough." Lily remembered those words. Vivian heard them too, but she interpreted them differently. She saw a man who had chosen a quiet life instead of a successful one. She did not see the discipline behind his silence or the experience behind his careful decisions. Later that afternoon, Vivian approached Caleb near the ski patrol station. The wind moved softly through the trees, and the scent of pine filled the cold air. "You know, Caleb, someone like you could have done much more," she said. "A person with your abilities should not be hiding away here." Caleb looked at her calmly. Maybe a peaceful life is not hiding. Maybe it is choosing what matters. For a moment, Vivian had no response. She was used to people defending themselves, explaining themselves, trying to prove their worth. Caleb did none of that. He simply returned to his work. As the sun disappeared behind the mountains, the temperature continued to fall. The weather reports showed a stronger storm moving toward the area overnight. The resort staff prepared carefully, checking equipment and reviewing safety plans. Caleb joined the ski patrol team, as he had done many times before. No one there questioned his judgment. They trusted the quiet man who always stayed calm when others became uncertain. But Vivian still did not know why. She only saw a humble ski instructor living inside a small cabin near the woods. She did not know that the man she considered ordinary had spent his entire life preparing for moments when others needed someone they could trust. And the mountain was about to ask him for that trust once again. The storm arrived quietly at first, like a warning whispered across the mountain before the world finally listened. By late afternoon, the sky above Alpine Ridge Resort had turned a deep shade of gray, and the peaceful beauty of the slopes carried a different feeling. The wind moved between the trees, the temperature dropped, and the familiar trails that welcomed thousands of visitors each winter began to demand more respect. Caleb Whitmore noticed the change before most people did. He stood near the ski patrol station, watching the clouds gather over the peaks. His expression remained calm, but his eyes carefully studied every detail. The younger members of the patrol team knew that look. It was the look of someone paying attention when everyone else was still enjoying the moment. "The mountain is changing," Caleb quietly told Liam Parker, the ski patrol leader. "We should prepare before people realize they need help." Liam nodded. He had worked alongside Caleb for years, and he understood something most visitors never noticed. Caleb never acted out of fear. He acted out of responsibility. Meanwhile, inside the resort lodge, Vivian Ashford enjoyed a warm drink beside the fireplace while reviewing messages from her company. The room was filled with luxury, soft lighting, and the quiet conversations of successful travelers. To Vivian, everything could be managed with preparation, resources, and determination. That belief had helped her build a powerful career. But mountains followed different rules. Her daughter Lily sat nearby, looking through pictures she had taken during the day. She showed her mother a photo of Caleb helping a nervous child learn to ski. "He is really patient," Lily said. Vivian smiled slightly. "He seems like a good person," but there was still a distance in her voice. She respected kindness, but she had not yet learned to recognize quiet strength. As evening approached, Caleb returned to his cabin to check on Emma. The small wooden home stood peacefully among the snow-covered trees. Inside, Emma was finishing her homework near the window while the warm glow of the fireplace filled the room. "The storm looks beautiful," she said. Caleb looked outside and smiled. "Beautiful things can still require respect." Emma nodded, understanding that her father always saw deeper than what appeared on the surface. Later that night, the resort became quieter. Guests returned to their rooms. The lights along the pathways shone through the falling snow, and the mountain rested beneath a growing blanket of white. But the weather continued to worsen. The ski patrol team received updates showing that conditions would become more difficult by morning. Caleb helped organize equipment checks and reviewed the emergency plans with the team. No one questioned why he remained so focused. No one asked why his decisions carried such confidence. They simply trusted him. Across the resort, Vivian looked out from her window at the endless snow. For the first time during her trip, she felt something she could not control. The mountain outside did not care about her company, her reputation, or her success. It only cared about preparation and respect. She did not know it yet, but the person she had misunderstood would soon become the one person standing between her family and an uncertain night. And when that moment arrived, the world would finally see the quiet strength she had overlooked. The mountain was silent in a way that made even experienced visitors feel the difference. The snowfall continued through the night, covering the trails, the cabins, and the roads around Alpine Ridge Resort with a thick layer of white. By morning, the world looked peaceful, but the quiet carried a warning that only people who respected the mountain could understand. Caleb Whitmore was already awake before sunrise. He stood inside the ski patrol station, studying the weather reports while the rest of the resort slowly came to life. The radio on the table was filled with updates, and every member of the team moved carefully through their morning routine. Visibility is getting worse near the upper trails, Liam Parker said. Caleb nodded while looking over the map. Then we keep people close to the safe areas and remind everyone not to take unnecessary risks. His voice was calm, not because he underestimated the situation, but because he understood it. Across the resort, Vivian Ashford prepared for another day with her daughter Lily. She had planned a morning of skiing, pictures, and memories before returning to her busy life. But the storm had changed the schedule. The resort announced limited access to certain areas, and guests were encouraged to stay near the main facilities. Vivian accepted the decision, although part of her struggled with the idea that something outside her control could change her plans. Lily, however, was more interested in the snow falling outside the window. She wanted to see the mountain one more time before they left. "Mom, can we just take a short walk near the lodge?" she asked. Vivian looked outside and hesitated. Before she could answer, Caleb appeared nearby while checking the area. "The lower path is safe if you stay close to the marked signs," he said. "The mountain is beautiful today, but it deserves attention." Lily smiled. "You always say that." Caleb smiled back. "Because it is always true." For a brief moment, Vivian noticed something she had ignored before. Caleb was not simply helping guests because it was his job. He genuinely cared. There was a quiet responsibility in the way he spoke, the way he observed his surroundings, and the way people naturally trusted him. Still, she did not know the reason behind it. She only saw a kind man with a simple life. Later that afternoon, the resort became busier as visitors gathered indoors because of the worsening weather. Caleb continued moving between locations, checking on guests and assisting the ski patrol team. Then, just as the sun began to disappear behind the clouds, a worried voice came through the radio. A child was missing. The words changed everything. The cheerful sounds of the resort faded instantly. Staff members stopped what they were doing. Families looked around with concern. Vivian felt her heart sink when she realized the child was Lily. "Where was she last seen?" Caleb asked immediately. His tone remained steady. Liam quickly shared the information while the team prepared. Vivian stepped forward, fear replacing the confidence she usually carried. "Please," she whispered, "find my daughter." Caleb looked at her and gave a calm nod. "We will bring her home." In that moment, Vivian saw something different in him. Not the simple ski instructor she had judged earlier. Not the quiet man living in a small cabin. She saw someone who carried responsibility like it was part of who he was. The rescue had begun, and the person everyone turned toward was the one person she never expected to trust. The moment everyone feared had arrived, and the mountain no longer felt like a place for adventure. It became a place that demanded patience, focus, and the kind of calm that only comes from years of experience. Inside the ski patrol station, the room was filled with quiet urgency. Team members checked their equipment, reviewed the latest information, and prepared to search every safe route available. Vivian Ashford stood near the doorway, holding her coat tightly around herself as she tried to understand how quickly everything had changed. Just hours earlier, she had been a powerful CEO making decisions in conference rooms across the country. Now, none of those achievements mattered. She was simply a mother waiting for news about her daughter. Caleb Whitmore looked at the map spread across the table. He did not speak quickly. He did not create panic. He studied the details carefully, listening to every update from the team. The last confirmed location was near the beginner trail, Liam Parker explained. The weather shifted after that. Caleb nodded slowly. Then we start there, but we do not rush. We follow the mountain, not our emotions. The room became quiet. Everyone understood the meaning behind those words. Caleb was not ignoring the fear in the room. He was controlling it. Vivian watched him closely. This was the same man she had questioned the day before. The same man she thought was simply comfortable living a small life away from ambition. But now, everyone around him looked to him for direction. A younger member of the ski patrol approached Liam and quietly asked, "How does Caleb know exactly what to check?" Liam glanced toward Caleb before answering. Because he has spent years learning how to stay calm when others cannot. Caleb organized the search carefully. He assigned areas, reviewed communication points, and reminded everyone to look after one another. His leadership was natural, almost effortless. He never raised his voice. He never needed attention. People simply listened. Vivian felt something changing inside her. The image she had created of Caleb was beginning to disappear. She remembered his words from earlier. Maybe a peaceful life was not hiding. Maybe he was choosing what matters. For the first time, she wondered what experiences had shaped him into the person standing before her. As the search continued, the snow reflected the soft glow of the rescue lights moving across the mountain. The resort had become almost silent except for the sound of footsteps, radio messages, and the wind moving through the trees. Caleb walked carefully with the team, observing details others might miss. A small mark in the snow, a misplaced item near the trail, a pattern that suggested where someone might have gone. He was not searching like someone trying to prove himself. He was searching like someone who understood the responsibility of bringing someone home. Hours passed. Vivian remained at the station, surrounded by strangers who were now working together for one purpose. She looked at Caleb through the window as he prepared to continue deeper into the search area. She finally understood something important. The quietest person in the room was often the one carrying the greatest weight. And somewhere beneath the simple jacket and humble life was a story she had never imagined. The mountain seemed endless beneath the falling snow, but Caleb Whitmore moved through it with a quiet confidence that surprised everyone watching from the resort. The search had continued for hours, and every passing minute carried more worry. Yet Caleb remained focused, not because he felt no concern, but because he knew that panic could never replace careful thinking. The ski patrol team followed his instructions, checking the areas most likely to provide answers. Every decision came from observation, experience, and patience. At the resort station, Vivian Ashford stood beside the window, watching the lights move slowly across the mountain. She had built her entire life around making decisions quickly, solving problems before they became serious. But this was different. This was not a business challenge. This was her daughter. "Why is he so calm?" she quietly asked Liam Parker. Liam looked toward the mountain before answering. "Because Caleb knows that fear makes people miss what matters." Vivian looked down, remembering every moment she had misunderstood him. She had seen his simple clothes, his small cabin, and his quiet personality. She had assumed he lacked ambition. Now, she realized she had mistaken humility for weakness. Far away from the lights of the resort, Caleb continued searching with the team. The snow covered many signs, but he paid attention to the smallest details. He noticed the natural shape of the landscape, the direction of the wind, and the places where someone might seek shelter. These are not guesses. They were skills built through years of discipline and responsibility. One of the younger patrol members watched Caleb carefully. "How did you learn to read the mountain like this?" he asked. Caleb paused for a moment. "You learn by respecting the environment around you. The more you listen, the more it tells you." The answer was simple, but everyone understood there was a deeper story behind it. As the night grew colder, the team reached an area where the trail became less familiar. Caleb stopped and looked around. Something about the surroundings caught his attention. He did not announce it dramatically. He simply adjusted his approach and guided the team forward. Back at the station, Vivian received the update that Caleb had found a possible direction to continue the search. She closed her eyes for a moment, overwhelmed by gratitude and uncertainty. She wanted to thank him, but she also knew there was something she needed to understand first. This man was not searching for recognition. He was not trying to impress anyone. He was doing what he believed was right. That was when Vivian noticed something she had never expected. Caleb carried the same quiet confidence, whether he was teaching children, helping guests, or facing a difficult moment. His kindness was not something he turned on when people were watching. It was simply who he was. The hours passed slowly, and the mountain remained covered in silence. Then, through the radio, Caleb's voice finally came through. "We have found her location." Everyone in the station froze. Vivian covered her mouth as tears filled her eyes. The team prepared to bring Lily back safely, and for the first time that night, hope returned to the room. But Vivian still did not know the greatest surprise was waiting for her after the rescue. She had discovered the kindness of the man she underestimated. Soon, she would discover the history behind it. The first thing Vivian Ashford heard was her daughter's voice. It was quiet, tired, but unmistakably familiar. After hours of uncertainty, that single sound felt like the entire mountain had finally released its breath. She rushed forward as Lily was brought back toward the warm lights of Alpine Ridge Resort. The moment mother and daughter saw each other, everything else disappeared. The questions, the fear, the long night of waiting. There was only relief. Vivian held Lily close and whispered that she was safe, while Lily looked over her shoulder toward Caleb Whitmore. "He helped me," she said softly. "He knew what to do." Caleb stood a few steps away, covered in snow from the search, his expression calm, as always. He did not look like someone expecting praise. He looked like someone who was simply grateful that a child had returned home. Vivian walked toward him slowly. For the first time since they met, she had no confident speech, no assumptions, and no carefully chosen words. "Caleb," she said, her voice quieter than before. "Thank you." He nodded. "She is a brave kid." Vivian looked at him with a different kind of respect. The man she had judged for living a simple life had just done something that money could never guarantee. He had shown patience when others were afraid. He had shown leadership without asking for attention. He had carried responsibility without needing anyone to notice. Later that evening, after the resort settled down and the storm began to weaken, Vivian wanted to thank him properly. She walked through the snow toward Caleb's cabin near the edge of the trees. The small wooden home looked exactly as she remembered. Simple, peaceful, almost too ordinary for the person she had seen on the mountain. Caleb opened the door and invited her inside. The warmth of the fireplace filled the room, and Vivian noticed the detail she had ignored before. The handmade shelves, the family photographs, the small reminders of a life built around love and responsibility. Then her eyes moved toward a wooden box resting carefully on a shelf. It was old, but clearly important. "What is that?" she asked. Caleb looked at it for a moment. "Just something from a different chapter of my life." Vivian did not push, but when Caleb stepped away to prepare tea, she noticed a small reflection from inside the open edge of the box. She looked closer and froze. Inside were medals, carefully arranged and preserved. Beside them were photographs from years earlier, showing a younger Caleb in a uniform she did not recognize. The quiet ski instructor, the single father living in a small cabin, the man she thought had chosen an ordinary life. He had once lived an entirely different one. Vivian looked back toward Caleb, and suddenly every detail made sense. His discipline, his patience, his ability to stay calm when everyone else felt lost. She finally understood that his silence was not because he had nothing to say. It was because he had already experienced things most people could never imagine. When Caleb returned with 2 cups of tea, Vivian looked at him differently. "Why did you never tell anyone?" she asked. Caleb gently placed the cup on the table. Because that is not who I am today. The answer stayed with her. He did not need old achievements to prove his value. He did not need medals to deserve respect. The mountain had already revealed the truth. And for the first time, Vivian saw Caleb Whitmore not as a man living a simple life, but as a man who had chosen a meaningful one. The silence inside Caleb Whitmore's cabin was different from the silence on the mountain. It was not empty. It was filled with memories, lessons, and the quiet understanding of a man who had spent his life protecting what mattered most. Vivian Ashford stood near the small wooden table, still trying to understand the person standing in front of her. The man she had once seen as someone who had settled for a smaller life was now someone she viewed with complete respect. She looked again at the medals resting inside the wooden box, then at Caleb's calm expression. "You carried all of this with you, and you never told anyone?" she asked softly. Caleb looked toward the window, where snow continued falling over the trees. "There was a time when those things were important," he replied. "But people change. Life changes." Vivian listened carefully. She was used to meeting people who wanted the world to know their accomplishments. Executives displayed their success. Leaders spoke about their achievements. But Caleb had done the opposite. He had chosen silence. He had chosen family. He had chosen a life where people mattered more than recognition. "I judged you," Vivian admitted. The words were difficult for someone like her to say. "I looked at your cabin, your job, and your choices, and I thought you were someone who had stopped trying." Caleb turned back toward her. His expression remained gentle. A lot of people confuse peace with giving up. Those words stayed with Vivian. She remembered the first day they met. She remembered the way she questioned his choices, the way she assumed success had to look a certain way. She had measured a person by things that could be counted, but Caleb had built a life around things that could only be felt. Trust, responsibility, kindness. The next morning, the resort slowly returned to normal. Guests walked through fresh snow, children laughed near the beginner slopes, and the mountain once again looked peaceful. But something had changed. People who had once overlooked Caleb now greeted him with admiration. The ski patrol team respected him not because of his past, but because of the person he was every single day. Lily and Emma played together near the lodge while their parents watched from a distance. Vivian noticed how naturally Caleb connected with everyone around him. He never tried to become the center of attention. Somehow, that was exactly why people noticed him. Later that afternoon, Vivian found Caleb preparing equipment near the ski patrol station. "You know," she said, "most people would have told that story 100 times if they had lived your life." Caleb smiled slightly. "Maybe some stories are not meant to be told. Maybe they are meant to be lived." Vivian looked at the mountain behind him. For the first time, she understood the difference between being admired and being respected. Admiration could come from success, money, or status. Respect came from character. The woman who once believed Caleb needed to become something greater finally understood that he had already become exactly who he wanted to be. And in the quiet moments after the storm, when the mountain stood beneath the morning light, Vivian realized the greatest lesson was not about the medals hidden in a cabin. It was about the man who never needed them to prove his worth. Weeks passed after the storm at Alpine Ridge Resort, but the memory of that night remained with everyone who had witnessed it. The mountain returned to its peaceful rhythm, the ski trails filled with laughter again, and the warm lights of the cabins glowed beneath the endless winter sky. Yet for many people, something had changed forever. They no longer saw Caleb Whitmore as just a ski instructor or a quiet volunteer who lived near the trees. They saw a man whose strength came from something deeper than titles or recognition. Caleb never changed. He still arrived before sunrise, checked the equipment, helped beginners find confidence on the slopes, and spent evenings with his daughter Emma inside their small cabin. To him, life had never been about being noticed. It had always been about being present. Vivian Ashford returned to the resort several times that winter. At first, she told herself it was because she wanted Lily to continue learning to ski. But deep down, she knew there was another reason. She wanted to understand the man she had misunderstood. She wanted to learn from someone who had found peace in a world where she had spent years chasing success. One afternoon, Vivian found Caleb teaching a group of young visitors near the beginner trail. A child struggled to stand on the snow, looking frustrated and ready to give up. Caleb simply smiled and offered a hand. "Everyone starts somewhere," he said. "The important thing is that you keep trying." Vivian watched quietly from a distance. It was the same patience he had shown during the rescue, the same kindness he showed every day. There was no difference between the hero on the mountain and the father inside the cabin. They were the same person. Later that evening, Vivian and Caleb stood outside the lodge as the sun painted the snowy peaks with golden light. "You know," Vivian said, "I spent my whole life thinking success meant reaching higher than everyone else." Caleb looked toward the mountains. "And now?" She smiled softly. "Now I think success might mean becoming someone others could depend on." Caleb nodded. He did not need to say much. He had always understood that lesson. Over time, their lives became connected in ways neither expected. Lily and Emma became close friends, sharing stories and adventures around the resort. Vivian became someone who valued the quiet moments she once overlooked. And Caleb remained the same man everyone had finally learned to respect. He never asked people to know his past. He never used his achievements to demand attention. His actions had already spoken louder than any introduction ever could. The medals inside his cabin were still there, carefully preserved but rarely touched. They represented a chapter of his life, but they did not define him. What defined him was the way he treated people when no one was watching, the way he protected hope when others felt uncertain, the way he chose kindness even when recognition never came. And on a peaceful morning, as snow fell gently over Alpine Ridge, Vivian watched Caleb help another family learn to ski. She finally understood the truth she had missed from the beginning. Some people spend their lives trying to prove they are important. Others quietly become unforgettable. Caleb Whitmore never needed the world to know his story. His dignity, his compassion, and his quiet strength had already told it for him. Thanks for spending your time with us today. If this story meant something to you, don't forget to subscribe and support the channel. And I'm curious, how old are you? And did this story feel relatable to you? Let me know in the comments. Stay tuned for more exciting stories.